Well, joining me now to discuss World Water Day and the importance of proper infrastructure is Anders Berntell. He's the Executive Director of the 2030 Water Resources Group. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, as we heard there, the Flint water crisis is in the spotlight. But what about other cities and perhaps other regions that could be at risk?
Well, I think what happened is in Flint is both sort of an infrastructure issue and a managerial issue. When it comes to the infrastructure, the problem was the lead pipes that you have in the city, but the managerial issue is that when you shift from one raw water source to another, you should check the effects of that new water in the infrastructure that you have, and that wasn't done. So I think it's both. But I mean, the problems with infrastructure, I think, is much bigger. There is a huge gap when it comes to investments in water, wastewater infrastructure in general in this country and in many other countries around the world.
And why do you think that is, being that water is such a precious resource? Why do you think there isn't that investment?
We have a tendency to take water for granted and are not really willing to pay the right price for that service that is brought to us. I mean, God gave us rain and seas and rivers for free, but he did forget to put in the pipes and the pumps and all the treatment facilities that is needed. So someone is doing that for us, and it's something that we should value and actually pay the price for.
Now, speaking of how water kind of taps into our lives overall, the theme of this year's World Water Day is better water, better jobs. Help us understand that correlation.
Well, maybe it makes more sense if you turn it around. Less water leads to less jobs. All human activities depend on water in one way or the other, which also means that all our economic activities do depend on water. So that means that everything, I mean, agribusiness, food production, energy production, manufacturing industry, mining, oil and gas, and so on, everything depends on water. So when water becomes scarce or where water quality is threatened in our rivers and lakes, that also affects these different business areas, and leading to maybe that a company decides to move their production from one region to another, or investments being stalled because the investors are getting scared that the water is not there to sustain the production.
Now, as we mentioned, a lot of people do take for granted that they can just open up a faucet and water will come out and it's drinkable and usable. But over time, as water becomes more scarce, what do you think is going to happen to the pricing?
Well, I think prices for water needs to be increased. But I think there is also a lot of opportunities to actually address the scarcity challenges. We have a tendency to waste water quite a lot. And one of the biggest users of water is in agriculture and our food production. And we know that our population will increase, we will need more food, etc. So we will also need more water for that. But we need to find ways of producing more food with less water. And we know that we can do that. The technology is not an issue. It's the incentives to do the right things.
And what sort of incentives or policies do you think should be put in place to help that become a reality?
Economic incentives are indeed very powerful. So pricing, as you was referring to, is one part of it. But it's also a matter of sort of political will and the political courage to make the right decisions. Many farmers, for example, depend on water, and many politicians depend on the farmers' votes. So it's sort of a circle. And we need courageous politicians that can make the right decisions.
And speaking of some of these courageous politicians, as you look at some of the countries that are perhaps getting it right when it comes to water security and infrastructure, who are the standouts for you?
Well, if we look globally, I mean, in many developing countries, there are at least cities who do get this right. Durban in South Africa, Kampala in Uganda, Phnom Penh, amazingly, in Cambodia, are some of these cities. But also other countries. I know the EU, for example, has a quite good water policy. So I think that, I mean, good examples are out there and things are changing.
That's definitely something that we'll have to keep an eye on, something that the whole world clearly needs to get more involved in.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for joining us, Anders Berntell.